Well, thank you very much to Gamal for hosting us this afternoon. Thank you all for joining us on our inaugural Lead North here in Manchester. We've been thinking about this for some months, and we've been really excited to bring the Lead brand to Manchester. Lead, for those of you who don't know, has been running in London for about the last, I think, 14 or 15 years. And then we had Lead Scotland, and now we've had Lead North. And whether we come back or not really depends on you. It depends on the feedback you give us. It depends on what we see, the demand from across the industry to do this. We are very focused as the Advertising Association on the whole of the UK. Just about 46% of the employment in our industry is in the UK, 54% is outside of the UK. And Manchester is the second most important hub for the business. So it makes a huge amount of sense that we're here in Manchester to talk about you. And the theme for Lead this year, and we've done Lead in London in February, obviously Lead Manchester here today in May, and we'll be doing Lead Scotland later on this year in October. So the theme for us this year is really about responsible growth. And what do we mean by responsible growth? Well, we mean growth is obviously very important, and we heard from Ian, a pretty gloomy economic outlook, where it looks like we're going to have very, very sluggish growth at the bottom of the sort of pack in terms of Europe and so on. But I think I would contrast that with what we heard from Bev Craig, because actually we hear about an enormous success story here in this city. So responsible growth is all about balancing those things. We need growth, but we need that to be inclusive. We need that to work for everybody. We need that to work for the whole of the UK, for all of our citizens. And we need that growth to be sustainable. It's not growth at any cost. And those are really big themes for us here at the Advertising Association. And I think that responsible growth depends really on partnership. And again, I think Bev started us off brilliantly talking about the partnership that has been key to the success of Manchester and the Manchester economy. And I was really, really surprised by when she described Manchester 20 years ago, because my brand, if you like, the brand perception I have of Manchester is of a really successful, dynamic city, and a real challenger city, particularly to London, being based in London. So I didn't, all of that she talked about 20 years ago about Manchester, I had no recollection of it. It does show the difference that ambition can make, but the difference I think that Manchester's had is this incredible partnership. And in our industry, I think it's really important to reflect on the success that bringing Media City here, all of the things that was building on what was already a strong centre for our industry has really, really shown how partnership can drive economic success. We need much more growth, and I think in our industry, it's about those sort of partnerships. So at the Advertising Association, a lot of our work is working with government. We had Miles here earlier on talking about, I think, a great scheme in terms of improving AI skills. We have really close relationships with government departments, with politicians. We speak to politicians of all parties, so we're really politically engaged. And we think there's a really important partnership to build between industry and government. We talked about collaboration. That's a big theme of today. But I think actually it's a much bigger, I think collaboration is something that's quite easy to talk about. Of course, you work with lots of different people. You work with government, and private sector and so on. But I think actually it's a much more important theme that has come out. And I think it's an underlying theme, particularly for the success of a city and a region like Manchester and the Northwest. And that's interdependence. And you really get the sense of the importance of an interdependent, interconnected economy, where it's the scale effects of having big businesses based here and all the other businesses that feed off those big businesses. And it's not just about Manchester and in the Northwest, obviously Channel 4 in Leeds. We heard from Omnicom in Newcastle. The North is obviously much bigger than one city, and it's the interconnectedness and the interdependence between that. Interdependence is a key theme for our industry. The Ad Association represents everybody in the industry, the advertisers, the agencies, the production companies, the commercial media owners, the tech platforms. They're all members of the Ad Association. And we're all working together in that interdependent way to solve the big challenges. We think the number one challenge for the industry is to be trusted, is to be more trusted than we are currently. We're making good progress on that. You'll see on June the 4th, we're publishing a report called The Value of Trust, which will show that advertising is no longer the least trusted industry that we track. We are really excited about this. We've come off the bottom. 2014, we've been at the bottom of the pack. So we're off the bottom, and we're now moving up towards the middle of the pack. And the interesting thing is about advertising, it's moving up when a lot of other industries are either flat or declining. So there's things that we're doing in our industry that are driving trust. We think trust really depends on the work that we do. Suzanne, in her brilliant interview with Jonathan Warburton, talked about in terms of what we know what drives public trust, it's creativity. Engaging creativity is the number one driver of trust in advertising. We think it's also important to be sustainable. We haven't talked much about that this afternoon. In the 4 hours we've been here, we've covered quite a lot of ground, but we haven't talked about net zero and all the work we're doing on sustainability. That's really important. We've talked a lot, though, about being inclusive, and I think we've had some great panels on inclusion. The all-in work and about attracting talent is really important. The economic contribution, as I said, Ian talked about the sort of very gloomy macroeconomic output. But then I think actually what we always feel about our business, and I think Jonathan Warburton summed it up, is our business is all about creating business success and business growth. And that lovely story of going from a small, a one shop in Bolton to being the number one brand, and not only that, beating all those other brands that were much bigger and better established, shows the power of our industry. So, we make a great economic contribution, particularly in driving competition and innovation. That's how our business really thrives. So, that's why advertisers turn to the advertising industry. It's important to also remember the social contribution that advertising makes, and we've touched on that today. But the number two driver of public trust is the social contribution that advertising makes. So we heard from Warburtons about the work they do in the community, all the work that we've been talking about today about how we reach out and engage, particularly into parts of our society which we don't normally reach, I think is really important. So the social contribution of the industry, both in the work itself and the way that we all lean into all of the challenges that our country faces, I think is really, really important. We've talked a lot about talent today. We talked about attracting talent into the industry, particularly going out to schools and the work of MediaSmart and the Upriser program and so on. Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant work that we can all build on and get behind. We talked about developing talent. I think the big theme today has been about AI. I want the Essence Mediacom a sidekick in my day job. I thought that was absolutely brilliant. And thank you. Well, just give it to us, actually. We're a trade body. We can't afford to buy anything, so build anything. So, no, that was absolutely fantastic. So thank you very much for that. And retaining talent. I think skilling up in keeping we know that there's a problem retaining the talent in the industry. We saw the problem particularly around diverse talent. We've got to do so much better. And we've now got the data to show what we need to do. We've got the action plans. We had a brilliant summation of the all-in action plan. If your organisation is not an all-in champion or we don't know about the all-in work, please get involved. It's there to help particularly retain that talent. So I talked about interdependence. I think this is really, really critical for the industry. The interdependence between us all as a sort of ecosystem. All the people here in the room represent the ecosystem of Manchester, the northwest, and the whole of the north of the country in terms of how our business connects together. I think it's the superpower of our industry, is how brilliantly collaborative and interdependent and cross-wired we all are, and also how willing we are to share. I thought, going back to that EM sidekick, there is one of the leading agencies in the country sharing its tool with the whole industry and showing how they're doing it so the whole industry can learn and benefit from that. So I think that's a really important thing to remember. And there was a great quote from our president, Alessandra Bellini, who used to be the chief customer officer of Tesco. It's obviously UK's biggest retailer, fantastically successful company. And she talked about integration. And I think that interdependence and integration, the whole connectedness of our industry, it really, really mirrors each other. And she talked about this phrase, it all works if all of it works. And I think that's such a nice phrase to think about this. We've heard today about that, how all of us working together can really improve things, whether it's within our industry or between our industry and government, whether it's local government, national government. There's so much opportunity to improve our country through improving our industry and improve our performance. So I hope you've enjoyed your lead experience. Please give us the feedback when you get the follow-up forms to that. And finally, just thank you all very much for joining us. It only works if you turn up. So thank you very much for turning up and staying with us this afternoon. And I hope you can all stay with us for another hour or so for some drinks on the terrace. So thank you very much for joining us and see you outside. Thank you.